Hi guys, it's Mr. Rust, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the first chapter of Creating America entitled Crossing to the Americas. This is chapter 1.1 in the textbook. And I want to kind of talk you through some of the things that you're going to see in this early chapter, because while it may not be wars or politics or major events, it's important to understand how the textbook is laid out and how these early stories help us to gain insight into the context of what the culture of North America is going to become, because US history is more than just the United States. So if we take a look at the very first page of the very first section of the very first chapter, we'll see that it's laid out in a way that makes it accessible and identifies how we might learn best using this resource. At the very top of the page, you'll see that they've got three subheadings: the main idea, why it matters now, and terms and names. Each one of these I want to point out and recommend that you pay close attention to, because the textbook publishers are laying it out for you in the way that they think is most easily available, and they wouldn't waste your time. So don't jump over these and dive right into the text. That's a mistake. It's a rookie mistake, actually. The very first thing you want to look at is the main idea. And this is something you want to write down in your notes, because this will help you to understand the meaning and importance of all the other information in the chapter. It all relates back to the main idea. In this case, it says ancient peoples came from Asia to the Americas over time and over time developed complex civilizations. So pretty simple. Ancient peoples came from Asia to the Americas and developed complex civilizations. Why it matters now is one way that they're going to kind of explain why you need to know this. And I don't always agree with why it matters now. It says here archaeologists and other scientists continue to make new discoveries about these people. Yeah, I think for our purposes, we're not going to be into archaeology so much, but we are going to be wanting to understand some of the context of what was here before Europeans arrived, because a lot of their arguments about why they needed to take over need to be evaluated in this context. The Europeans are going to come in and basically say, look, this is all ours. Nothing was here before we got here. And what the textbook is telling us is that's not true. And if that's not true, then we can argue that a lot of what they did is not based upon any fact or logic or reason. But in order to argue that, we have to know about these early civilizations. Now, some of the terms are right here. Terms and names: archaeologist, artifact, migrate, culture, domestication, civilization, irrigation, and mound builders. So one of the things I want to recommend strongly that you do as we go throughout the textbook is to make vocabulary lists and learn the vocabulary. Everyone always asks me, what's a great way to study for tests or prepare yourself for whatever you need to know about this book? And I think the vocabulary is the most efficient way to learn, because not only do you need the vocabulary to become a better communicator, but by knowing this vocabulary, you'll be able to recall the information a lot easier. So make lists of the vocabulary and do it now, and spend a few minutes each day making another couple of words into your notes. It's not that hard, and if you start to make it a habit, you'll be able to knock it out in a couple minutes every day, and you won't even think about it after a while. So now that we've set out what's the main idea, why it matters now, and how to remember this stuff, let's dive into what it is. The textbook always begins with a story, and this one is One American Story of Solveig Turpin from Texas, who was an archaeologist who studies the human past by examining the things people left behind. Well, there's a definition for you right there for one of your vocabulary terms. Turpin believed that one of the paintings she found showed a religious leader who turned himself into a panther. That's exciting. That's kind of mythic. That's almost Hollywood-like movie stuff. Here's a quote from Solveig Turpin. Another important thing to realize is that the textbook is going to use evidence in the form of quotes, and you need to be able to use that as well when you write about what you learn in this course. The quote here from Solveig Turpin is, "This is the shaman, who's a religious leader, who transformed into the largest and most powerful animal here. I like to call the shamans supramen because they were over everything." So here's an interesting figure from North American history, a religious leader who has magical powers and can transform into very powerful animals. It's kind of an exciting idea. So the very first people in America is at the bottom here, and you can see it says, as many societies do, many Native Americans have stories explaining the origins of their people. Some believe the gods created their ancestors, others believe the ancient ancestors were born of Mother Earth. In contrast, scientists think the first Americans migrated or moved here from Asia. Well, migrated is one of your vocabulary terms, and they've even bolded it for you right here. And usually the bolded terms are vocabulary terms. Don't just learn them, but definitely know them. And here's the definition. To migrate is to move from one place to another. Scientists disagree about how and when this move took place. Some ancient people may have crossed the land bridge that joined Asia to North America during the last ice age. The ice age was a time of extreme cold that lasted for thousands of years. The glaciers trapped so much water that the ocean levels dropped. A land bridge, now called Beringia, appeared during where the Bering Strait is now. A map of that is on the next page. And when the Earth grew warm again, the glaciers melted and flooded Beringia. Some scientists who hold this theory believe the earliest Americans arrived, and we'll pause it there. So here at the end of the page, right, we see down at the bottom, right here, there is a place that they're telling you how to take notes. And you're going to make a chart. One way to take notes is to make a chart, organizing it, because you're going to be learning about three things in this chapter: the Americas, West Africa, and Europe, right? This is just for section 1, but so far we haven't learned anything about all of those except for some of the people who migrated. And under the section for the Americas right here, you might actually write a little bit about the people who arrived by the land bridge. All right, let's go on to the next page. So this is the map showing where Beringia is up here, and today it's filled in by water because they said the glaciers melted, but that was after people had migrated down into North and South America. And this happened 22,000 years ago. So definitely take some time to look at the maps, because oftentimes map questions will appear on tests or quizzes, and you're going to want to know what maps are all about because you might want to use them in your own analysis of history. It came over 12,000 years ago. Other scientists believe they came earlier. They've got artifacts in South America that show them to be 30,000 years old. So some scientists believe that people came over many routes, over many thousands of years, and sailing. Some came by boat. And so the theory may also change as scientists find more evidence about ancient Americas. Well, there's even been a lot of recent evidence that says that ancient Egyptians even came to North America by boat. And that would mean that Africans really discovered the New World. Now, that's pretty shocking stuff. And that's why this is important, because there's a lot of assumptions made about who came first. And Europeans for a long time assumed that they discovered America. Didn't really happen. So agriculture leads to civilization. So a culture, on one more of your vocabulary words, is a way of life shared by people with similar arts, beliefs, and customs. The first Americans lived in hunting and gathering cultures. They hunted small animals such as rabbits and large animals such as the woolly mammoth. They gathered wild seeds, nuts, and berries. In time, people started to plant the seeds they found. This was the beginning of agriculture. About 5,000 years ago, humans began domesticating animals. Domestication is the practice of breeding plants and taming animals to meet human needs. Another definition. By trial and error, people in central Mexico learned which seeds grew the best crops. So that's kind of important, because now we've got a region of North and South America. We focused on Mexico. And agriculture is the beginning of civilization. And where does civilization begin in North America? In Mexico. That kind of gives us something to understand the importance of what came first. And in history, first things matter. By selecting the right seeds, they improved the quality of the maize or corn. until it grew large. They dried and stored it for future use. Corn became a major food source. Knowledge of agriculture spread throughout the Americas, having a stable food supply changed the way people lived, and they no longer had to travel to find food. Farmers were able to produce larger harvests so that fewer people needed to farm. Now, pause here at the top of the next page. This is page 28, and realize that there is a question right here, and I wanted to point these out to you. The question, let me just move my face a little bit so you can see it. The question is, why would a culture need to learn agriculture before it could develop a civilization? Now, before we get into the answer to that, I want to point out that these questions in the margins are really important because they'll help you to test what you remember about the reading. And if you can answer this question from your memory, then you probably have picked up the most important information, because they wouldn't ask just any random question. They're asking questions they think are important from the context, from the words, from the sentences. And so if you can answer these questions, then you're okay. This is, of course, a way to study. This is a study guide in the book, in the margins. So if you ever want to know how to study, first, learn the vocabulary. Second, go through the margins and answer the questions in the textbook margins. You can even have somebody else ask you the questions, and from memory, you can give the answers. So if a parent or a brother or a sister wants to study with you, or you could ask them to, that's how you would do it. And definitely work with someone, and don't just work on your own, because when you work with someone, you're more engaged. If you work on your own, you can become kind of passive. All right, so here it talks a little bit about how some cultures grew to complex civilizations. So agriculture allows for people to stay in one place. And it says right here, slowly some cultures grew complex and became civilizations. A civilization has 5 features. Well, that's something you're going to want to put in your notes, right? The 5 features of civilization. Cities are a center of trade. Specialized jobs for different people. Organized forms of government and religion. A system of record keeping, and advanced tools. So those are the 5 things you're going to need to know about civilization. With agriculture, you get all of those. Right? With agriculture, you don't have to constantly be looking and gathering and hunting for food. You can stay in one place and provide for survival with food. And then once your survival is ensured, you can then specialize with trade and roles and professions and record keeping, writing stems. It all comes out of agriculture. And where does agriculture really begin? In Mexico. So where's the first civilization going to be? In Mexico. Early Mesoamerican civilizations. About 1200 BC, an advanced civilization rose in Mesoamerica, a region that stretches from central Mexico to present-day Nicaragua. For 800 years, a people called the Olmec thrived along the Gulf of Mexico. The Olmecs set up a network of trade routes and constructed earthen mounds in the shapes of pyramids. They built large, busy cities like La Venta. So that's an important paragraph, I'd say, probably one of the most important so far, because we've kind of laid out the building blocks of civilization with migration of people, and then agriculture and domestication of animals. And now we've actually got a civilization. And what is that civilization called? The Olmec civilization. And what is one of their cities? La Venta. Around 400 BC, the Olmec abandoned La Venta. Nobody knows why. But yet they found many designs of Olmec art, and there's even an example of Olmec art on this page. From AD 250 to 650, after the Olmec vanished, the Maya developed a great civilization. Their cities were in southern Mexico, in Guatemala, and they built pyramid mounds topped by temples. Artifacts from the Maya actually show that they used a calendar, a very accurate calendar. And they were the first people to create a number system using 0. So if you're a math person, this is major. This is huge, right? Because the use of 0 is one of the fundamental theories of math. And with math becomes advanced learning and logic and reasoning. And where does it all begin? Well, it begins with the Maya civilization in Central America. And of course, this means that they predated the rest of the world, that they were the most advanced civilization on the planet at this time in terms of math, agriculture, trade, religion. Right? This is something that rivals even the stories of Rome. Rome didn't have that yet. By 900, the Maya had abandoned their cities. Scientists believe that revolts, disease, and crop failures had resulted in that. Then we talk a little bit about the Hohokam and the Anasazi. These are civilizations in the American Southwest. The Hohokam were in Arizona, and they practiced irrigation. They showed early irrigation techniques. Then we get to the mound builders. These are people in sort of the Midwest of the United States, but before there was a United States, showing that there was an advanced civilization living in places like Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Indiana. This is a picture of one of the mounds that they built. It's kind of a mystery as to what they were for, but it shows that there was a diverse and varied civilizations going on in North America. Rounding this out on the last page of chapter 1.1 talks more about the Anasazi and the mound builders and where they were. So you've got a variety of different examples that have been given here, from the Olmec to the Maya to the Anasazi to the Hohokam to the mound builders. Each one of those 5 examples is something you're going to want to know about. And here at the bottom of the page, it gives you all of the vocabulary terms again, along with a way to write notes showing the ancient cultures and their location, and questions for you to answer. The main idea questions are always great review questions for you. And then to build it, right, to go beyond it, to show that you can actually show what you know, do the critical thinking question, which is here. How did the Hohokam and the Anasazi adapt to their living environment? Because they're different, right? One were cliff dwellers and the other were irrigation developers. So that's chapter 1.1. I'm going to try and keep this as short as possible, but don't forget all the tips we talked about in this, and we'll go on to chapter 1.2 next.